Hi everybody, Melissa here at the LEC, and I'm here with one of our resident animals, Brooks, and I went over the different kinds of reptiles we have here in Florida to include our snakes, and I wanted to bring Mr. Brooks out to show you actually how long he gets. He's a king snake, and that actually kind of means king of snakes. And you can see by his size alone that is a good name. Brooks king snakes are typically anywhere from 4 to 6 feet in length. Now, he is above average in length, and he's a very good eater. He actually eats about 2 to 3 mice a week during the summer, and every other week or so during the winter time. So we're getting into fall here, kind of fallish winter time here in Florida, and it's a little different from where Brooks is from. Brooks is actually from an area closer to southern Florida, down by the Everglades Keys area, and he's used to warmer weather, but reptiles are very resilient, and during the winter time, they will actually not be as active. So I am starting to mimic that with our feeding behaviors here, and mimic nature as to mean that I will not offer Brooks food as often, because that's typically the way it would be in the wild. Now, he's coiled up, so it's kind of hard to see how long he is, but he's coiled up because he's trying to keep nice and warm. And he's enjoying my warmth, I can see. Brooks is about almost 6 feet long when he allows us to measure him, because it's not something he likes to do, but we're guesstimating he's about 6 feet. Now he's sticking his tongue out, and he's trying to kind of survey the area. He's getting a good sense of his surroundings, and he is very good at climbing, and he's also very good at swimming, which comes in quite handy in the habitat where he lives. Like I mentioned before, he's a South Florida resident, and he can do so well in the southern regions of Florida, swimming in the Keys and the Everglades area. He does have bands on his body, which can be a little bit hard to see, but they're horizontal cross bands across his body. And he has a marbled kind of look to his scales, which these scales are made of the same material as our hair and our nails. So I get the question a lot, is there slime on their scales? There is no slime on their scales. Their scales are just kind of slippery feeling. So they look kind of slimy, I guess, because of the shade of light that bounces off of them. So this is Brooks, and Brooks is quite an impressive king snake, and they're king snakes because also they can eat other snakes, to include venomous snakes. Now, venomous snakes aren't bad snakes, it's just they have venom to help them digest their food. But given the opportunity, Brooks and king snakes of his kind can actually eat venomous snakes. Next up, we have Axl, and Axl is not a king snake like Brooks, and Axl has some moves. He's very good at climbing, and he's trying to show you right now how well he can wrap around somewhat of a tree branch of my arm to grab on and hold on tight. Now, Axl is a gray rat snake, and obviously he's gray, but he's different from the other rat snakes because he's not actually acting like a rat snake right now. He's got a lot of moves, and he likes to move and go around and around, and sometimes he just does this whenever he wants to find something, and then he finally settles down. And he's got a different pattern. He's a gray rat snake, but underneath his belly, he has checkerboards, kind of, intersparsingly throughout. And he's really slender and long. We have different, as I mentioned in the program earlier, I talked about different rat snakes, and they are quite different. Colorations, their body shape, their personalities, much like people, they too have different personalities. And as you saw with Brooks king snake, Axl's got way different of a personality to Brooks. He's a mover and a shaker, and he's got places to go. There we go. Now you can see him, and he's sticking his tongue out, but he's not trying to be rude. He just wants to smell the area and see and kind of get a good sense of what's going on. But there is a really cool green tinted color to underneath his chin that gives him a unique kind of difference in coloration from other rat snakes. He may be gray all over, but he does have that green coloration underneath his chin. Now, as far as what he eats, well, the clue is in there, the name. Rat snakes eat typically rats, but in this case, Axl eats mice. And unlike Brooks, who I mentioned before, eats about 3, sometimes 4 mice, Axl eats 1 to 2, depending on his appetite. And the time of year. As I mentioned before, they're starting to slow down. They don't necessarily stop eating. They just won't eat as much because they don't require as much food during the winter time. They go, it's not like hibernation, like that's more of a mammalian term, like bears hibernate. The reptiles actually just sort of slow down and don't eat. They're not as active as much. So they go through what is known as either brumation or torpor, which is a fancy word for I'm really not going to be that active this time of year. And I'm just going to hide underneath a rock or a log and wait until it gets warm again, because reptiles don't prefer to be out when it's cooler temperatures. But he is actually from the panhandle of Florida, so he's kind of more weather tolerant as far as colder temperatures. Because living in Florida, if we're going to get colder temperatures, that's where he's from. All right, now we have Blaze. And unlike Axl, who we met earlier, Blaze is a red rat snake. But does he indeed look red? He looks a little orange to me. And that's kind of what gave him his namesake, Blaze, because it's like a blaze of fire with that orange flame. And he is different in the sense that he is known as amelanistic. That's a big fancy word for I don't have as much red pigment in my scales. I have more of an orange coloration to my scales. So the red rat snakes are more red in color than Blaze is, and his eyes are red as well. But if he were albino, he would not have any color, and he would be all white with a very little small hint of reddish color on the parts that are the darkest here. The red rat snake or AKA corn snake is what they are also called. But they don't eat corn. That would be silly. I can only imagine if they tried to eat corn, what that would look like. They are found in cornfields, which is where most of what they eat is found, which happens to be, again, mice and rats. They do eat lizards, small lizards, and sometimes on occasion, smaller bird species. Pretty opportunistic in their eating patterns. Now, unlike the gray rat snake we met earlier, Axl, Blaze is not going to get as long as Axl. And like I said earlier, rat snakes come in all different colors, shapes, and sizes. So Blaze is somewhat of a petite size. He's only going to get probably around 3 to 4 feet, and not much longer than that. With that being said, I think he's a beautiful specimen, just the way he is, and lacking the red pigment makes him very unique, but it also makes it hard for him to survive in the wild because he would stick out like a sore thumb. And that would not help him in surviving because he would not be able to hide from predators. He is also sticking his tongue out and getting a good sense of his surroundings. And he will eat about 2 mice. They're found throughout Florida, but like I said, mostly in fields and pastures and barns, hunting the prey that they consume.